Hello, okay, so in this video we're going to be looking at multiplying and dividing using decimal numbers, which can be a bit tricky, but the aim of today is to make that seem a whole lot easier. The best place to start is being able to times or divide by numbers such as 10 or 100 or 1000 and so on and so forth. So if we take a decimal number such as 21.45 and we want to times that by 10, for instance, this is making this number a whole 10 times larger than what it currently is. And by making something 10 times larger, it means that the decimal point is going to be moved along to the right hand side one space. So that would mean that it goes from between the 1 and the 4 to between the 4 and the 5. So that would actually end up with an answer of 214.5. That's if we times it by 10. Now the way we can tell how many decimal points we need to move, or how many spaces we need to move that decimal point, is by counting how many zeros, or by counting how many digits there are in total of this number and reducing it by 1. So in other words, there's 2 digits, so we need to move it one space, which is 2, take away 1. So we're moving this decimal point one space to the right, so that makes 214.5. If we're moving it or timesing it by 100, so 21.45 times by 100, this has 2 zeros or 3 digits, so that means 2 spaces of movement for this decimal point, so 1, 2, and we are moving it in the right hand direction to make the number bigger. So that makes 2145, and then the decimal point will be after the 5. So if we want, we can put 0.0 if we wish, but that's not generally necessary with something like this. So there we go, there's our answer for that. What about if we're dividing then? So I'm going to take an example. By the way, both of these examples that I'm writing down are from the downloadable document on the CyberTutor library. If you wish to have a look at that document, feel free. So here we go, 43,651.75, and I want to divide that by 10,000. So first of all, identify the decimal place or decimal point, which is here. How many spaces will I move it? Well, there's 5 digits or 4 zeros, so I'm going to move it 4 spaces. So 4 spaces, but because I'm dividing, I need to make the number smaller. So dividing means moving the decimal place, decimal point to the left-hand direction. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and these loops are jumping over the numbers. So this tells me the decimal point needs to be between the 4 and the 3. So if I were to write this number out, I know that between the 4 and the 3 is the decimal point because it's moved from the 1, between the 1 and the 7, 4 spaces over to its left. So there we go, there's our answer for that. Okay, so that's dealing with timesing by 100, 10, 1,000, 10,000 and so on and so forth. Now we're going to look at how to times actual decimal numbers together, something like 3.2 times by 2, for instance. So only one of these is a proper decimal number, this 3.2, but the way to do it is completely ignore the decimal point. And if we were to just ignore it and write it down again, it would just look like a 32. So let's just do 32 times 2. In other words, that decimal place has just been removed, but this is only temporarily. 32 times 2, well, you can do this any way you wish. I'm going to do it using this grid method. 32 times by 2. 2 times 30 makes 60, and then 2 times 2 makes 4, so this totals up to be 64. So I know that my answer is going to be something to do with 64. However, I need to then decide where I'm going to put this decimal point, because if you remember, we ignored it from the start, but now we're going to sort of reintroduce that. So the way to do that is look at your original two numbers that we're multiplying together and count how many decimal places there are in total. And what that means is, if I take this 3.2, there's one decimal place here. So this 0.2, that makes one decimal place. And this 2 actually has 0 decimal places because we've got no decimal numbers after. So that's sort of as like a 0, so I'll put that in a little circle as well. Now I'm just going to count up how many there are in total, which makes one decimal place in total. So then I'm going to go back to my answer and start from the right hand side and go back one space, and then I'm going to put my decimal point between the 6 and the 4, which makes it 6.4, and that's the answer. Okay, so let's take this up to the next sort of notch, I suppose. 0.021 times by 1.2. Another question from the downloadable document on the CyberTutor library. 0.021 times 1.2. So if we were to do the same thing again, I'll just sort of section that bit off. Ignore the decimal point. So that's sort of like 0.021, which is the same as 21. So I'll just remove that and just say that's 21. And then I'm going to times that by, well, with this number without the decimal is 12. So I'm then going to times 21 by 12. And again, you can sort of do this whatever way you're comfortable with. I prefer using the grid method. It's a bit easier. 20 times 2, which makes 40. And there we go. So in total, this makes 252. So 252. So I know my answer is going to be something to do with 252. Now I'm going to go back to my question, the two numbers in particular up here, and decide how many decimal places there are in each one. So this one here, 0.021. So there's 3 there, the 0, the 2 and the 1. And how many decimals in this one? Well, there's the point, so the 2 makes just the first one. So I've got 4 in total. So what I'm going to do is go back to my number, go 1, 2, 3, 4. There goes my decimal point, and any loops that haven't got a number or a digit in, I'm going to fill it with a 0. So I know that my answer is 0.0252. So there we go, that's how we do that one. So that should make a fair amount of sense for decimal multiplication. It can work the same each time if you follow those same steps. Now we're going to look at some the other part, which is division, being able to divide by decimals, and this is slightly different to the multiplication way. So we're going to take this example, 5.6 times, divided by 0.8, and the best way to do this is take one of the numbers and try and remove the decimal point, move the decimal point over to its right hand side. So here's the decimal point, and I'm going to move that to its right hand side until it's gone. So that makes 56, because the decimal point comes after the 6 now. So that's a one space movement to its right. So what I'm going to do is take this 0.8, the other number, and do exactly the same amount of spaces, which is just a 1 to its right. So that makes the decimal on the right hand side of the 8. So that makes in total divided by 8, 56 divided by 8. And those of you should know that from your 8 times table, that makes 7. Okay, so let's knock this up a notch for a slightly harder one, but just to sort of make sure that everything's understood. Once you do this, if you move the decimal point on one number, and as long as you do the same on the other number, the dividing number as well, on both numbers the decimal point has moved the same amount of times, your answer will always be correct, and you do not need to adjust for any decimal points after that. So here's another one, 4.32 divided by 0.06. So first of all, I'm going to take the decimal point of one of the numbers, so let's take this dividing number here, and I'm going to remove it by moving it not one space but 2 spaces all the way over to the right hand side. So that's a 2 space movement to its right, which means I've got divided by 6, and I'm going to have to move this exactly 2 spaces too. So that makes 432. So now I need to do 432 divided by 6, which I can do using what some of you may recall as the bus shelter method. So 6 into 4 doesn't go, so I'm going to put my 0 and carry the 4. 6 into 43 goes 7 times, because 6 times 7 is 42. There's 1 remaining. And then 6 into 12 goes twice. So my answer is 72, with no remainders, no decimals, anything like that. So when we don't need to adjust that again. So there we go. That's decimal multiplication and division. Alright, so here's a single bracket expansion. Are you happy to give that a go?
Yeah, would it be 6x plus 5?
No, actually, it's not quite that. Not quite right. Do you want to give it another go?
Oh, was it 3 times 5 as well?
Yeah, 3 times 5 as well.
So it'd be 6x plus 15.
Yeah, perfect. Well done.